With us this morning is Congressman Scott Perry from the 10th Congressional. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Hey, we're doing fine, Gary. It sounds like you are too.
We are. I couldn't believe this guy was mowing his lawn at 10 to 7.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen anybody do that in a while. But hey,
I think your assessment might be pretty. He's either tried to manage his time and get it in before he's one of those critical folks that got to run off to work, or he could be one of those folks that he's just sick of sitting in the house and day after day. I mean, there's a lot of folks that are cleaning up and doing things around their house, but they run out of money, they run out of things to do, and maybe their house isn't that big, and they're still stuck home. Some people, there's only so many things you can do.
Sounds like you're describing cabin fever. Yeah, so
exactly.
Might have just wanted to get outside, get a little breath of fresh air, and see what would happen. Hey, I want to get right to a couple of things because we only have a short segment with you this morning. This Navy guy last week, the whistleblower who talked about the virus outbreak on his ship, I saw he just tested positive for it, and he was fired, and there's a lot of people up in arms about this. What's the gist of this story? Was it just simply that he was doing something that there was a chain of command on how to present that information, or was there more to it than that? What's your take on it?
Well, I got to be careful to speculate, but if I had to speculate, I would think that it's a chain of command issue. There are protocols as a individual who is privileged to wear the uniform for over 35 years. Yeah, right. I mean, we all have questions, problems, differences of opinion at times regarding our military service and decisions that are made, but there is a chain of command that works, and it includes going to your member of Congress if that's appropriate, if you can't get the answers. But even with that, there's a protocol to it because you can't have everybody in charge. There's as the saying goes, if everybody's in charge, no one's in charge. And if you jump the chain of command, you jeopardize literally not only the mission and the people that might be involved in it, but literally it could be jeopardize the whole nation by doing those things. So it's very strict about that, and they're very serious about it, and they always have been.
One of the things that came up as an idea last week, and it came up from some Democrats, and Senator Ted Cruz spoke out about it this weekend. It was the idea of one person to a car. And Senator Ted Cruz just kind of erupted and said, we're not living in a police state, quote unquote. How far do we go before the government intrudes on the rights of people in this country and we start to think that maybe we've gone to a more authoritarian type state instead of the representative democracy that we're supposed to have?
Yeah, I think we have to be really, really careful. Obviously, what we want to be, and that's going to be in the eye of the beholder. And, of course, the states are making a lot of these decisions. Federal government's trying to back them up, and the federal government even is making some of those decisions in the cases of, telling manufacturers, you will do this at this period of time. But I think you really, people in authority, people in the positions of authority, need to exercise restraint in that regard. I mean, if you have children and you're a single parent and you've got to get to the store, what are you going to do? Leave your kids at home, or make a decision to be afoul of the law by taking them with you, even though you might not want to take them with you, or do you go get a babysitter so that you can go to the store, but then are you imperiling your family members because you don't know, if your babysitter has got a health issue regarding COVID-19. So I think we just have to be mindful and very thoughtful of these decisions as we make them, and just take the extra time that's necessary to think through all the different kind of branches and sequels, if you will, of the decisions that we make, and don't use this as an opportunity to impose upon the freedoms of Americans, but use this as an opportunity to count on their better angels and the fact that most people really want to do the right thing, and they don't want to be a part of making this worse for anybody, their family members, their community members, et cetera. But they also have to find a way to get through this, and not all of us have the same circumstances.
Well, I think you're talking about self-responsibility and all that, and yet at the same time, is there a sense that you have that there's a window here, or a tolerance level, or a ceiling, if you will, that people will put up with to a certain point? and then they're going to say, you know what, you just got ridiculous on us, and that are representatives of the people, that you are not the government. In other words, you being government in general.
Yeah, right. No, I agree with that. I think there is a tolerance level, and I think, again, it's all in the eye of the beholder, so to speak. I mean, I've been doing these teletown halls with thousands and thousands of people, particularly on COVID-19 issues, and you will have some callers or some listeners that say, that somebody's actions were unbelievable and then, unacceptable, and then the next person will say that those actions were just fine and appropriate. Right. And so it really is in the eye of the beholder. Some people see this as necessary, that the government should just essentially lock everybody down, because they don't like the fact that some businesses are allowed to be open and some are not. And then you have some folks that are saying, we simply cannot do that. Our country cannot withstand that, not for right. 1 week and certainly not for 1 month. There's just no way.
Speaking of callers, we have a caller on the line has a question for you this morning, Congressman. Sharon in Bro. Go ahead, Sharon. You're with Congressman Scott Perry.
Good morning. I just wanted to ask if there's any sunset clauses in any of this legislation that's being passed, so we're not stuck with big government our lives forever.
Oh, good question. Go ahead, Congressman. I know she's talking about some state legislation there as well. So.
Well, I'm not as familiar with the state legislation, but certainly on the federal legislation, I know in not the last bill that we passed, not the $2.2 trillion, but the one prior to that with the testing availability for every single American and other provisions. There were some sunsets in there. Now, some of my colleagues didn't want any of that to sunset for 2 years, which I think is just patently ridiculous. But we had to fight through to the end of this year, and that's what we eventually agreed on. I would have preferred at the end of the emergency, so to speak, but we fought through to the end of the calendar year. But I suspect even at the end of the year, all factored in that there's an election, one way or the other, supposed to be an election in November this year, and some of the issues that are scheduled to sunset even at the end of the year now will become a political issue and probably an issue in the campaign where some of my colleagues, the policies that were instituted make them long-term policies as opposed to the short-term duration regarding the emergency. And so, Sharon, it's a great question, and there are sunsets, but we'll even argue of are they appropriate or not at this point.
As you said, Congressman, things to be discussed that we're not even talking about right now. We appreciate you being with us this morning. Please be safe, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, you all be safe, and just follow the guidelines. Wash your hands and keep your distance as much as you can, but love your neighbor.